Hey Latinas,
I'm Nastasia.
and I'm Ariadna, y vamos a latear un poco. We're empowered Latinas who want to make you feel celebrated, inspired, and heard by providing Lati.
LaTeaNa is a weekly podcast that can be found anywhere. We are raising our voices and making an impact by diving deeper on the topics that get swept under the rug and more.
Frequently having guest Latinas who are making a powerful difference. Join us to expand this great community.
Let's pour some tea. Hi, LaTeaNas!
Hi
We
Latinas!
are so excited we have the beautiful and wonderful and talented Elizabeth Acevedo here with us. Hi,
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
So
Hey,
excited. Hi.
how y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Excited to be here.
We're so
Thank you
excited to have
so much for
you all
being
on.
here. We're very excited to have you
Yeah,
here.
super. So let's just dive on in. We have a couple of questions that we want to harass you with. Um, so first off, there's just always so much pride and joy when seeing a woman not only chase after her dreams, but live in it. So whether that be career choices or lifestyle choices or any other. So to see an Afrolatina do it adds on an even bigger smile, because I feel like when one accomplishes something, then we all do. And when she does something, the many young ladies growing up will see themselves in her, and it produces even more dreams. And then a healthy cycle of believing that you're capable of anything really begins to flourish. And then the next generation inherits that confidence, and then the next one, and then so on. And I wanted to quote something from the Poet X book that the character Xiomara said. And she said, "My parents probably wanted a girl who would sit in the pews wearing pretty florals and a soft smile. They got combat boots and a mouth silent until it's sharp as an island machete." So my question is, entering a creative career, especially one in writing, is not something that's considered normal or safe compared to being an accountant or something alike. So choosing to go against the norm or defying someone else's idea of who you should be can be exhilarating for some or scary for others. Which feeling do you typically embrace?
I think it's a little bit of both. Yeah, I love that you say like it's not as sure as an accountant. I'm like, yep, my father trained to be an accountant in the Dominican Republic. My mother took a year of accounting. My oldest brother's an accountant. Like that would have been the family plan. But I think I was always moved by the thrill of performance of what something that I thought was wholly my own, an experience that was my own, and then you say a poem out loud and you realize, oh, look at all the people in the audience reacting who have also had this, right? And so for me, poetry and art and performance was the ability to say you're not alone, right? And when I was a kid listening to hip hop and studying hip hop and wanting to be a rapper, I felt like that's what Eve and Nas and Pac, right, and Lauryn Hill were telling me, like, these things you think are your hurts and your shame and your embarrassment and just you by yourself feeling all that is not true. And so it is nerve-wracking to go against the grain. It is so scary to say, and I kind of flung myself. I didn't have a lot of external support in terms of financially, or, well, you can always come back to the house, not because my parents didn't want to, but just because they couldn't, right? So that meant that there was a lot of fear. But I'm so glad I leaned into it, and that even though it's still scary, you know, some of the dreams I have, I'm like, like if this fails, I'm gonna fall flat on my face. But that same kind of little voice inside of me that's like, yo, but if you do it, it's gonna be so dope, right? Like that's the thrill. That's the voice that's like, yo, but if I pull it off, like, and so I just try to stick with that feeling of I just gotta, if I could just make the vision, I know what it's gonna do. And so I find that that's a good guide for me.
Girl, yes. Absolutely, yes. I love that. Oh my goodness. So then does that mean that there was no plan B?
And so my story is an interesting one. I wanted to be a rapper. I did performance poetry for a long time. I went to studios. I had a producer. My brother was like taking me to all these open mics and events and really trying to get my name out there. And this is, you know, early 2000s, late 90s, growing up in Harlem, New York City, right? And so I went to college knowing that this was the thing I love to do. But clearly there is no performance poetry major, right? And so I designed my own major in college. I did a creative writing and theater major, and kind of made up my curriculum, got my own advisors, got it approved by the school, like did all of this work to say, I have an idea of what I want to do and it's not here, how can I build it? And then we hit a recession, and it was like, this is a terrible fucking time to try to be a teaching artist in the world, or like a performing poet who pours. Like, no one was paying for, or not well, for people to do that kind of work. And I thought about, well, I love literature, I love reading. That's the reason I'm a writer, because I love stories. What if I try to teach that same love? And so I became a school teacher. And I enjoyed my time in the classroom. I loved my students. I worked at a school that was 80% Latinx. They had never had a Latina teacher teaching a core subject. They had never had an Afrolatinx teacher teaching there at all. And so here I am in this space where I felt like I could make such an impact, because these kids have never seen or heard someone who shares so much be in front of them, right? And I loved teaching. And so not that it was a plan B, it was its own plan A. But as I was doing that, I realized this could be the life. What about that dream I had? Like, let me go and try to chase that for a little bit. And then I can come back. And teaching is a lot of performance. You know, you do the same act 4 times a day. You have audiences that don't like you and don't want to listen, that you have to win over. You have a script. You have to bring energy regardless of what you actually feel. You got to get on stage. And so I felt like there were a lot of skills I was still honing while I was in there. But I don't know that it was necessarily a plan B. What I will say is, I think sometimes people want to say, like, just fling yourself at your dreams. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that those of us that come from spaces where we don't have daddy's money, or we don't have a safety net, or there's not just, oh, well, you just will hold a job for me. Like, it can be harder. Mm-hmm. So I stacked those 2 years I was teaching. I made sure that I applied to all these MFA programs and ended up only even considering the ones that offered full funding. Right? I made sure that I was really mindful of budgeting, like all these things that I hadn't considered. How do I set myself up so that when I left teaching and was like, I'm going to send out 150, what is it called? You all would know this, but like not a portfolio, but when you said a press kit, 150 press kits, just emailing nonstop, cold emailing people press kits. Like, yo, I'm a poet. I do this. I've done this, all the work. I'll do this kind of workshop. I was hustling, right? And maybe like 3 of them came back. I'm like, well, I guess I have a 3-school tour, you know, but I have no income. I don't have too much happening, but I did everything I could to set myself up so that I could chase the dream for a year or 2. And thankfully it worked out. But I think that to say there was no plan B, there wasn't a plan B. There was, I'm going to make this happen. But there were a lot of other options I would have been, I think, really happy with, that I could have grown in. I think that there was a way that I made sure that I had kind of a safety net for myself, right? And I guess there were other plans down the road. Like, if it doesn't work now, I'm going to build up. So in 5 years, in 10 years, and you know what I mean? Like, I think sometimes we think there's only one shot. And in my head, it's like, well, maybe this might not be the moment, but I'll keep working, and I'll find that moment. And I think when the moment came, I was ready, right? When it was like, oh, look, there's this space opening up for certain kinds of stories. Here I am with 3 manuscripts that I've been writing on the train to and from school every day.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? I'm sorry, I'm very verbose, so I go on and on, but I try to bring it back eventually.
Giving all the info, go ahead.
Exactly. I totally resonate with your story as well, because I know you were a teacher, of course, and I was a teacher for 10 plus years.
Wow.
And anything from like kindergarten to like high school, but yeah, mainly little kids. And that wasn't always a plan A. Like, my plan A is doing this, is doing creative writing, is doing, you know, promoting my own stuff, producing my own stuff and whatnot. But writing, what you said, it is performing. I always loved it as well, because you're prepping yourself. You're going to have a bunch of different people, a bunch of different kids in this case, of course, with different walks of life, who might like you, might not like you, and et cetera, et cetera. So definitely not only the teaching aspect that I can resonate to, but that kind of aspect of having that safety net, because I never had that either. So like, you kind of made yourself, you fought for yourself, or like you make sure that you were your best safety net.
Yeah.
Basically. I think that's the best way to sum it up.
Yeah, when you know that you are coming into the world and you are your parents' safety net, you hustle different.
Yeah.
You move different when it's in that direction, when there's no trust fund, there's no like, well, here's starter money. There's, you know what I mean? Like it's when it's, oh, I'm sending money back. I think
me too.
It's a different pressure,
it's
right?
Different.
Of how you then have to approach certain dreams. And so that's why I try to be thoughtful of like, think about your setup, and it's okay if you take time to get to the position where you can launch yourself. That's okay, because you want to make sure that you have the basic needs you require to be well. You know, and sometimes it's like, well, I'm just gonna go. I don't have nothing in the budget. I'm like, I mean, you could do it, and I think we've seen some stories come from that, but at what cost of our own well-being and health? It's just a conversation I wish we were having more of, like those early stages that aren't as comfortable or easy, that we don't have a blueprint for, like what can we look for outside of like, well, just tie your bootstraps and like make it happen. Like it's not that.
Especially when the influences that you have on TV or media or mainstream are like, yeah, well, we just worked really, really, really hard and we were able to do so. But like you look at them and it's like,
my favorite like Shark Tank, and they're like, yeah, I had like, you know, my angel investors, family and friends, and like $100,000. I'm like, that's not like a baby money. Like that's not like you go on Shark Tank and like I've already raised, like the average person, if I were to ask my community growing up, my family and friends for money to start a business, I mean, I'm sure you could raise a lot, but not the average person could be like, oh yeah, my homies just gave me $100,000 so like start this business. So I think sometimes that dream chasing has to be communal, has to be thoughtful, has to be well planned, and there's nothing wrong with taking time. Sometimes I think we feel an urgency to chase right now. We have to win right now, and it's like I just really believe in the long game.
Yeah,
me too. Absolutely, exactly.
I think it's actually really funny because before LaTeaNa, as you guys know, I have a production company and we have films and shows set up all throughout Hollywood. But before that, I was a preschool teacher, and even after that, I was nannying for 10 years. So it's like, I mean, I think it's so funny that we're all teachers.
I know, right? The coincidence, but I think it just happened, something that links us.
Yeah, but like it just shows. It's like it just shows how much. But whenever we know something or whenever we have knowledge to something, we're always so quick to give it back. And when it comes to our art or our knowledge, you know, it's not something that we're just keeping for ourselves, you know, using that to only look out for ourselves. Like we give that back. And I think that's so interesting. I think it says a lot about not just us three, but a lot of the women out there who do that. So I think that's awesome.
I completely agree. And going back to what you were saying, Elizabeth, is I love like showing people the hardship as well. It's so easy to compare yourself. Like, don't compare yourself your day 1 to somebody else day 5,000, 10,000, or whatever, or that person's year 5. You know what I mean? They all started somewhere. So what you said, I also agreed. I feel like we need more people talking about that hardship. And it might bring some past traumas or not, but I think overall, in general, if we all start speaking about how hard we had to go through, like all the hoops and loops and all the things about to get to where we are, I feel like we're more, well, first of all, we're definitely more real and realistic and whatnot, but more believable, more relatable, more unique, and that's what the world needs, to be honest.
No one can relate.
So I definitely agree.
Yeah,
no exactly. It's progression, not perfection.
It's really hard to relate to perfect. You can't. You relate to testimonies and trials and tribulations. That's what you relate to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I guess I'm also pushing against even that. Like, I don't know that I like urge relatability. When I think about the early stage, I think what I want to push is you are the only person who can make the blueprint you require to build the vision that you see. So if you were trying to borrow my blueprint for how I got here to build your house, that is not going to work. And if you think you want my house, you know what I mean? You might need a different vision. And it's not because what I have, I don't think someone else can have. I don't mean that at all. I guess I mean like what you bring to anything that you do has to be in the membrane of what you're building. And so I had to go a certain path to be like, I have to make my major and then not have a job at that, and then teach, and then go to grad school, and then tour, or not even tour, and then slam and fail and try to publish and fail and keep doing that on repeat and throw it at the wall until something stuck, and then things started flourishing. But if I try to give that blueprint to someone, like, all right, well, go slam and then win a national championship,
right?
you know what I mean? Like, that feels daunting because it's like those footsteps don't work for me. So I almost want to even strip back the comparison of like relatability kind of requires comparison too. It requires a where am I in relation to this person? How close are we or how far? What would it be to say, I don't even care about where I am in comparison to this person. I want to look at what they did that I could borrow and leave the rest and just add my own DNA. Like, I think that is where, and maybe that is a comparison to an extent, but it feels a lot more analytical of there's information here that will be helpful to me, as opposed to there's information here that makes me feel bad. Like, what is the information I'm receiving from this Instagram post or this Twitter or whatever it is that is going to help me in whatever I'm trying to do, whether that's self-care, my house, my work. And if it's not that, keep scrolling. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm trying to teach myself. I say all this, but it's really just me, like, all right, Liz, maybe when you hop on Instagram, make sure you're doing this thing. But I don't know. As we talk about what we relate to and what we're moved by, I also want to push folks to just, I don't know, I get so many emails and calls, like, just help me do the thing you did. And I just really want to urge for, like, do the thing you're trying to do and take whatever I can offer, but don't map onto people.
Yeah.
Or you don't have to map onto people.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's because I've been in quarantine for a while.
I love it.
New humans.
It's like I can finally see these thoughts out loud.
Right. All these,
They can be
all these
fun.
But that's the thing. I do love what you were saying as well, because it's just everything's like, we were talking about this yesterday, and it's not to be purposeful. I feel like that's kind of where your explanation was leading me to, like, think of that word. Everything what you're saying about Instagram posts and like the Twitter and whatever you're feeding yourself, whatever book you're like, what can I do with this message? How can that help me be a better self, be a better human, and just have a better life in general?
I like purpose.
Yes.
I think we all do better when we feel like we're making meaningful things, and often
True.
Purpose that guides us to that, regardless of what that meaningful thing is. I make a lot of bread on the weekends, but that feels meaningful. That feels like, here's a thing I am working to get better at, and that feeds myself and my, you know what I mean? Like, whatever it is, just find the daily meaningful. But purpose is a big word, for sure. For sure.
It's a beautiful one.
Did you say you make a lot of bread on the weekends?
Yeah, I used to bake a lot when I was little, and I know everyone's like, oh, quarantine baking. I'm like, I guess, but like, I'm like, yeah, quarantine baking. Like, I'm with it. I really love. There's so much metaphor there, but I also just like gluten and bread. It's been fun to make a whole baguette and then eat the thing. Like, it's just.
I got so excited, I just accidentally threw my phone across the room. But yeah. Yes, girl, I was just thinking about yesterday. I was like, man, I could really go for some carbs right now. And I didn't care where it came from. It was like macaroni. Last night I was dreaming about eating macaroni and cheese. It's just been one of those days.
No, I hear you. And I think so much of this quarantine has been like, what does my body and my soul and my mind need? And can I figure that out? And like within this very constrained space. And there's something about the challenge of bread and the joy of bread and the smell and the rising and the time. Like, there's something there that's about like patience and making that feels really, really good. I haven't been able to write in the way I would like to.
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask how your creativity is during quarantine.
It's ranged. You know, I was really tired in March. By the time we got to March, I had kind of been fully touring for somewhere close to 4.5 years, pretty much nonstop. I mean, I take summers off. I follow the school schedule, so I would get June and July. But after the first novel came out, I still had events in the summer. I still had interviews and was traveling to go do all kinds of things. And so the way that I think I've needed real rest, you know, I wasn't getting that. And when quarantine kicked off, when we had stay-at-home orders, I live in DC, man, it was a relief. It was wild, right? Because it's like at what cost to myself, but also to like the whole world, this like stop moment. But it was so necessary. And I would say I probably got until May really feeling like, wow, is this what breakfast feels like, in a routine? And like I wake up in the same bed every day, and I can guide what I eat because I'm not on the road and I'm not at someone else's, like that felt novel to me. And now I'm in the phase where I'm like, I'm gonna cut my own hair. I'm like just buying clothes, like just like, or not even clothes, but just like I'm just trying to rail against what feels like monotony. So I'm there now. But creatively, I think at first, it felt like, okay, there's time, there's space, I can read more, I can spend more time with myself. I started, my friends and I, like writing collective workshops. So we meet once a week and share pages, and that felt really generative. And it's getting harder now. I think now it's like, how much can you make if you're not in the world, if you're not observing and talking to new folks, engaging, like and I have enough to draw from, but it's just been harder. It's harder to, now that I have a routine, that routine is boring, and I'm like, what do I do with that? Right? There's no newness to make the routine feel safe. It's just now the thing I'm trying to break apart because it's new guardrails. So it's been on and off. And I'm working on a couple of things, right? So I have a screenplay for With the Fire on High, which you held up, Ariana, which is great. Thank you. And I have a working on an adult.
Are you writing a screenplay?
I am.
You are?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That is so impressive and awesome at the same time.
Whenever a woman does something, I feel like that is so fucking, I'm sorry guys for the cursing. That is so awesome. I love that.
It really is though.
It is so hard in that it's a very different genre and form than I've ever written in. So I've had to teach myself a lot. And I am one of those students who is very angry when I don't know things right away. Right. And so learning what feels like a massive project, right? This is me like working with this production company to bring my work to screens. I don't want to fail at my own stuff. Right. And so the opportunity of, wow, I have another chance to tell this story in a different way. That's exciting. But
that's very exciting.
Yeah, it's so fun. And I get to like sit with the characters again and return to the world. But it is difficult to say, I'm not sure if I'm doing this right, and if I'm doing enough, and what if I'm not the person who should have adapted or written this. And so those new doubts of being a student are coming up.
Girl, shed them. Shed them.
Well, quarantine has been my learning how to like really love all and protect my creativity and my like little voice and be like, you're okay, like you can learn.
Protect your energy, definitely. Your inner voice, your inner child, your inner everything. Just protect it. Like that's what we've learned.
I'm like so over the moon. I say this all the time. I know Ariana, you're probably so tired of hearing it, but I'm like, we need more Afro-Latinx writers. Like we need them.
I'm not tired of listening to that. No, I agree. And I'm like, yep.
I can't tell you how many pitch meetings that I've gone on or phone conversations with studio execs who feel like that I can't write a story that's based in Colombia or Mexico or Cuba because I'm Black. And I'm like, do you like the lack of representation? Maybe they just don't see. I don't know what the hell their problem is or their lack of knowledge, really what it is. But what do you mean? Like, I feel like, or just even when a story of an Afro-Latinx person is finally written, it's not written by an Afro-Latinx person. So you're not getting the correct point of view. You're not getting the true struggles of hearing stories like, please don't tell anybody that you're Black, just say that you're Latina. That's all that you need to say. You don't get those types of stories. You don't get the real and rawness and authenticity of what an Afro-Latinx person goes through. So you going in and writing the screenplay, girl, yes, whatever doubts you got, shed them right away, because you got this, girl, do it.
I'm working on it. And I mean, similar to what you said, I've had conversations about every single one of my projects being adapted, including my chapbook of poetry, right? And I can't go into details at all, but it's been so interesting to ask in these meetings, like, all right, well, who would you consider for the screenwriter? Like, who are some folks? Or tell me about casting, like, what do you imagine? And so often the names that come up for across the board, or just the, I don't know, we don't know. We don't have anyone, right? Or we're not sure. And so I think that it is I know so many writers. I know so many incredible writers, screenwriters, playwrights, poets, right? Folks who are polymaths in terms of how they're able to artistically move. And so for me, it's like, what is the disconnect between the people who have the power to green light what gets made and the people who I know who are creatively telling these stories? Like, how do we connect folks, right? Because I have had to make hard decisions where, you know, I'll sell or license something, and I know, like, well, I'm gonna have to work with that writer, or we're gonna have to be in collaboration, and I don't mind that, but it's knowing going in, like, there's such a lack, there's such a deficit at every level of the people who would I think have the most proximity to the topics, and perhaps the intrinsic care for a lot of these characters, that it's so sad. And I think we're changing. I think we're seeing more people infiltrating industries that we haven't seen them in before, but it is wild to be in meetings and like, that is a very fair-skinned Colombian actor who you are saying should play a dark-skinned Afro-Dominican from New York. And not to say like that distance can't be crossed, but it is to say, if that is where you first went when thinking of this main character, I'm not sure how you understand the work is engaging with colorism or blackness or beauty when you are showing me the same face I've been seeing since I watched Venezuelan novelas and Mexican novelas and whatever novelas my whole life, and never saw a morenita. And so, like, no, that is literally antithetical to the point of my work. And so I don't know how, let's bridge this gap, because I'm not sure if you're getting what I'm trying to get to when I'm writing these things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. I know we are totally getting off topic, but like, Ariana,
having a conversation. This is all on topic for me.
Exactly. This is like what the world needs to hear more of. Crying out loud. But I guess, okay, you're definitely right. Let's go back into your book. One of the many books that you've written.
I guess we should do
let's go back. Sure. Even though this one's very, like, this is a topic that we need to discuss without a doubt.
Oh my gosh, no, I'm like...
Because we talk about it all the time, and I hear your stories and stuff behind the scenes of, like, the meetings and whatnot, so those need to come out to light and be like, yo, this is what's happening, let's freaking fix it.
Black Twitter is on fire. They working it, though. So it's getting there one way or another. It's happening. It's getting there one way or another. But Black Twitter, it's on fire. So.
All right. So your book, Clap When You Land, hits all the feels when it comes to dealing with loss, with family, and forgiveness. So what inspired you to write Clap When You Land? Sorry. Was it that you connected to write the story? Like, what is it that connected you to write the story and not another?
Yeah. I would say that Clap When You Land probably has two origin stories, or two things that guided how the novel eventually came out. The first is that I was about 13 years old when flight AA587 crashed in Queens, New York. It was a plane full of 280 passengers on its way from JFK New York Airport in New York City to Santo Domingo. And so, 80% of the passengers were of Dominican descent. This crash happened 2 months after the attacks on the World Trade Center. And so growing up as a New Yorker, as a young woman of Afro-Dominican descent, to watch the ways in which my city felt under attack, but also to watch the ways in which we had a very clear understanding of what was a tragedy and what was just like oh, well, if it's not terrorism, we don't care. And that's very much what it felt like with the crash of this plane full of Dominicans. Like, oh, we are just not as important. We don't get the same media attention. We don't get the same. I don't remember a guidance counselor coming to school. I don't remember a grief counselor coming to the school. I don't, like, when I try to think about all the things that happened post 9/11 and the ways in which it was like, oh, we have to take care of our students and take care of our kids and come together as a community. And then the ways that Dominicans in New York, I felt, were kind of left to fend for themselves. And what was it? I mean, it was a big tragedy. Like, I just always remember that discrepancy. So that flight has stuck with me, and I knew I wanted to write about that flight. So that was my first early kind of way into this story. And as I was doing research on that flight, I realized that one of the biggest things that I was struck by, and I think I was struck by this as a kid and just didn't have the language, is like, what is it? Who do we offer dignity to in death? Who is allowed to say, this is how I want to be remembered and how I want my story told? And I would argue that there are certain people who are able to control the narrative because of whatever power that they have. And there are other people who are just kind of pushed to the wayside, or we only hear one side of their story. And what I kept learning was that there were a lot of secrets of people who were on those flights that came out after the fact. And something about those secrets really struck me. Like, are these secrets for the public to consume? Are these stories and decisions that people made in whatever point in their life for us to navigate? What does it mean to have to deal with the fact that you may have lost a family member and then have to also grapple with the fact that, like, all you thought you had with them or the partnerships or the things you built may not have been that, right? And I kind of really just wanted to tease that out, that there was something there that I wanted to explore about masculinity, about fathers who fail, about parents who can no longer be heroes, about young people who have to learn how to save themselves. And so the story kind of fused there. And for folks who don't know, the book Clap When You Land follows two characters, Camino and Yahaira, who find out that they're sisters when their father dies in a plane crash. So it's very much mapped onto those two big impetuses that kept pushing me towards wanting to tell this story.
Thank you so much for sharing this story. Of course, it was a very powerful book, and what we were saying before earlier in the conversation, we've seen your TED Talks and we've seen a lot of other interviews, and anytime you talk about this book in such a passionate way, I feel like much of what we were talking about before, more Afrolatinx, there you go, out there, also these kind of stories, that's the ones that we have to listen to and like realize that this does happen more often than we think. I mean, not to an extent of a plane crash, but nevertheless.
When I saw the cover design, I was like,
yeah,
oh my gosh, it looks like people who are in my family. I was like, yes.
Yeah. I'm always really proud of, I've been really proud of the last three covers. I think just having all of the characters.
That's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
I love it so much. And I love like the inner part is also like you can have, I don't know, like they can't see us, of course, but you can also have like their, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's, I mean, all the different.
It's been really, really great to work with my publisher in terms of like making the entire book a piece of art, right? And you see with the third one that you can now take the cover off and the case cover is also designed. And so bringing in little elements throughout all of the books so that it feels like you're walking into a whole experience. And that's something I love. And I'm glad like my design team, we've all been able to figure out kind of the not the formula, but the way that works. But for sure, having young Black women depicted on the cover of books feels super critical to like what I'm trying to do. I want young people to see the cover and like know what time it is, right? Like if you're a Black girl reading these books or looking for books, like, yeah, this is for you. And if you're not, like, yeah, you're going to walk into a world that might be different than what you know. And like, I'm not sugarcoating that. There's not going to be no, oh wait, was she? No, like we're from jump. I'm telling you what was going on. And so it's an invitation, but you don't got to take it, right? And so I like that it's very boldly, this is what we're talking about in these books.
I felt like I felt like a kid in a candy store when I saw that. I was like, I know that it's gonna mean, as I said before, like it's gonna set up the next generation for success along with the next one, because they're gonna see themselves finally, and in ways that our generation was not able to. So good on you. That's
props.
Yeah.
Do you have a specific memory or moment where you realized that writing is the vessel that you wanted to, or you wish to use to express your creativity?
I remember being 8, and I had been making up songs for a long time, but it was the kind of thing I would just make up the song. I would repeat it to myself over and over and like just sing myself songs. I do remember vividly being even younger than 8, and my mom would leave me with the neighbor that lived on the 5th floor, Doña Reina, who was lovely, but I'm sure I must have gotten on her last name, last nerve, because what I remember vividly is she had all these plants in the windows, and she would make me walk around her whole apartment and like sing to the plants.
Oh my goodness.
Bueno, para ello, van a crecer. And I'm like, I want to do my part and help the plants grow. And I think she just wanted to get me out of her hair, right? But I sang all the songs I knew, and then I would have to make up songs. And I would go the next day because Doña Reina was the woman babysitting me while my mom was working. And she would be like, all right, cántale otra vez. And I would be like, oh no, I'm too little. I can't remember the words. Right? And that feeling of, I want to be able to make so I can remember the words. Like that was the first, like one day I'm going to know how to write and then I won't forget.
Aww.
And so I think that my writing has been a recording, has been a chronicling, has been a like, I want to offer something to someone. And so it requires me to write so that I can show up and like, so I can remember, so I can, like, there's so much tied into my belief of if I write it down, it can't be taken away from me, either by memory or something else. Like once I write it, it's fijo. And so I think that that was a really...
That's a very cute anecdote. Yeah, and I love that sentence as well, that if I write it, it can't be taken away from me. I started writing when I was, 6, 7 as well. But I remember when I was 10, 11, and I started writing poetry. That was the first thing that I started writing. And I've already gone through like a little bit of hardship at that age as well, through being abused and all sorts of things. And what came out was that in just a poetry way and form. And I just put it out there to universe to help others, but most of all at that age, helping myself and be like, no one else can take away from like this away from me. Exactly what you said. Like I resonate with that as well, because it's like there's a power, and much like the three of us were teachers, the three of us are writers. So there's a power of just writing it down and saying, this is my story, this is my strength, and like this is where I want to go.
It's so therapeutic. Like I find it to be so incredibly therapeutic. My mom also wanted me out of her hair. I'm military brat, so we moved like every couple years, and I think the longest I've ever lived anywhere was 4 years. So it was always hard going to school and trying to find new ways to connect and to just be me and be okay, and also be that weird girl who has a Spanish last name but is Black, and no one really understood it. So I would come home crying to my mom all the time. Mm-hmm. And she was like, okay, why don't you just go take a journal and write about your day? Now, as I'm older, I know now that she was just trying to get me to get out of her hair. But I would go and write about my day, and then I would bring it back to her. Like, okay, I finished. Now what? She's like, okay, well, now take the same journal, turn the page, and go write the same story, but give it an ending that you can live with. And that, as much as I know that she was doing it just to get me out of her hair, it ended up being a way that I was able to cope with anything that bothered me, even with writing, or just as if I'm being thrown into a situation to where I'm feeling uncomfortable. I know that, okay, I don't want to be here, so let me just rewrite this ending now. I'm going to walk away and remove myself from the situation. And writing about it and then turning that into stories. And then it's like, okay, well then what if this happened? And what if that girl had a green dress, but that green dress came from all the way over here and it was connected to that person? Next thing you know, stories were happening. So like even today, like it's just become so therapeutic in so many ways. It's like, if I'm feeling one way and I don't want to feel that way anymore, let me just write myself a new version of what I would actually like to see, and then go about becoming that. So I think writing It's so therapeutic. I think it's so necessary. I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love what you said. I just wrote down like revise the moment in the moment.
Yes.
Like I think that's such a I lead a workshop where we revise memories, or like similar to what your mom did, like how can we rewrite something that may have kept us silenced. But I love this idea of like thinking of revision as you are living, like this ending isn't going how I want it to go, like I'm gonna revise right now. I'm gonna edit myself out in this. I don't need to see the draft before I know. I think that's such a dope way to think about like when you remove yourself from certain situations. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and edit.
Yeah.
Like,
edit that right now. Yes, absolutely. Always an edit and revision mode. It's okay. I'm fine with that.
Oh, definitely.
I think it sounds like you were trained. I mean, as much as your mom may have wanted you to like, occupy yourself, I think it's such a dope practice. One, to have you self-reflect, which journaling does, right? It lets us kind of just sit and process, but then also to equip you and empower you to say you can change it. Yeah. Or at least you can change how you feel about it. And I think that was a powerful thing she gave you, right?
Yeah. I told her, I was like, Mom, are you aware that you are responsible for who I am right now?
Yeah.
And she's like, I just got tired of you complaining all the time. So like, does not face her at all whatsoever. There's nothing that phases her.
There was no extra psychology. This was not about childhood development or this is not nothing. This is just, I need her to take an hour. I need an hour.
So speaking of the younger us, what is one thing that you would tell your younger self before she embarks on her journey of life?
I would definitely say what I said earlier about the blueprint, right, and not needing one. I think I was someone who was just desperate. Just like, teach me how to be the kind of woman I imagine is possible. Like, I just wanted someone to show me exactly how it was done. And in general, I'm someone who I think needs very tangible, very visual demonstration of like how things work. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I'm a visual. Like, for me, it's like I need to do and watch and get comfortable with, okay, I see how they're moving. I think I could do that too. Like, it takes a lot of buildup for me to believe, like, okay, I'm gonna jump in now. I'm not the first one out there.
I love that.
I got lost in my own reverie.
No, you can't.
I would tell my younger self the blueprint, but I think I would also tell, there was a boldness I think I've lacked, and that sometimes I still demonstrate, almost as if like I need someone's permission, as if I'm always looking for a parent or an authorial figure to say, yes, that's okay. And so I wish my younger self and my current self and my future self like continues the practice of like, there is no allowance. There is no stamp. There is nothing anyone can give me that externally should affect what I am capable or inclined to do internally. There's nothing that anyone can give me. Like, I know what is permissible and what is not in my work and in my life. And I create those rules, right? But I think maybe coming from a background where the idea of boundaries wasn't commonly spoken of or known, right? I was not my own and was reminded of, tú crees que tú eres dueña, tú crees que tú estás sola, right? Like this idea of you are not your own. Mm-hmm. And I think I've then looked outward for like, okay, so then who can give me the way to move forward? If I can't do it, I have to then constantly look. And I think I've replaced my mother and my teachers and all of these figures with mentors and other people to give me the thumbs up, and have had to learn like, that seeking for someone is really just a lot of fear in well, if I fail on my own, and I can't blame it on anyone, and I can't say it's anyone else's fault or I was pushed to. And so I've been trying to just learn like, be bold and be okay with whatever the outcome was done of your own volition. And that is the win. That is the win. The fact that you freely did that, whether or not it is what you wanted it to be or becomes, or, well, I really wanted to write about this, but I wasn't sure and I don't think I succeeded. Well, then that the attempt and the learning from it, is enough. And so I've just been thinking a lot about boldness and the ability to freely say, this is what I believe and what I'm going to do, and just trust myself.
Oh my goodness, yes. I was just thinking the other day, I was like, my parents tell me on a regular basis, like, you belong to me. Like, you were, you were my daughter even. And I think they have this understanding of maybe once I get married, then I stop becoming their responsibility. Joke's on them. But I get that all the time. Like, you belong to me. Whatever you do reflects our family. When you go outside, you have to make sure that you are representing us in a certain way. So that means that you have to do X, Y, and Z. And now that you say that, I think every single time I did write something, I had always asked someone, like, is this okay? Or do you feel like this is going to offend anybody? Do you feel like it's okay for me to tell my story? So, wow, I really, I had not thought of it that way until now. That's, wow.
It has.
Loud here. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
Well, I just wanted to offer one thing, and I'm not sure if you all heard this when you were growing up, but the phrase, tú te manda. Phrase. Like, I remember when I would walk down the street, that was the one time my mom would, but it literally just means like, you think you run yourself. Like, you manage yourself, right? And it's kind of saying like, you don't. Like, I clearly.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
I think I've always been like, tú te manda. Like, ¿quién me manda entonces? Who is the person that's leading me, right? Like, and as we're talking, I'm like, it just doesn't have to be a question. Like, it's just a statement, tú te manda. Right? And so I think that kinds of, at least for me, as I wrote it down, was super helpful to be like, oh, maybe I just need to start telling myself, like, tú te manda, you're okay. Like,
you're your own boss. You got this.
You're the boss.
Exactly.
You're the boss. That's it. Like
you're in control. And my 2 cents were that, like, I know I need to be more bold, or bolder, I guess, because I've always had that condition of, like, looking for that mentor and, like, asking someone else's permission. And, like, what Nasasa literally just said, like, is it okay to tell my story? Like, and we're going to be okay. And even as an adult, you're always trying to find, at least in my particular case, so, like, listening to you, it's like, oh my God, I'm not the only one. And I always talk about this is I'm like, I'm looking for people who are older than me and wiser to give me some sort of guidance. One, because not only did I have that upbringing as well, but also, like, I had the lack of parents for most of my life in general. So I was on my own. And through that, actually, like, okay, am I capable of being my own boss now that I was 15, 17, 25, 32, 45, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so even at my age, which is, fairly young and old at the same time, I guess, it's kind of like, oh, like, Ariadna, you're an adult. Like, you go in there, you got to tell your story. And it's so, it's a mix of what you were saying and, like, the lack of confidence that I still have, that I do recognize in myself, that I work on myself every single day. Because I know, like, I'd rather let you two speak, for example, and me, like, just be, like, on the bleachers, if you want to call it that way. Because, like, I don't know if I have permission, or I don't know if I have that. So it is a mixture of both of those things because of the way we were brought up, obviously.
I think that that's an interesting point too, though, right? Because maybe some of the looking up and out wasn't so much like, or wasn't always for me permission. And I'm glad you brought this up, because I think it does add a really necessary layer, that we are beings who look towards ancestry, right? We are beings who look towards like wanting guidance. And I think that's okay. And communally, we want guidance. We want to be nurtured. We need to be, because sometimes we just don't know how to feed. Like, I have this thing that I really want to do, and I don't know how. So you at least need someone to be like, well, go read these books, at least point you in the direction, right? And so I think, in my phrasing, that it has to be maybe both, like, tú te manda, like, you're the final say, and also, like, it is always okay to borrow, and be in community and in conversation with people, right? Both generationally, ancestors or elders, and also people coming behind you who may have a different. I love what you said, like, we're old and young. I'm like, yeah, your 30s is wild, because you're like, maybe, I don't know, depending on where I am, I'm either the youngest or the oldest. Like, there's no middle.
Preach. Really. Yeah, there's no middle. There really isn't. You're like, okay.
Some days I feel really young, but then other days my sciatica reminds me, like, bitch, you ain't that young. Like, what you thinking? Like,
I just literally a week ago was like, is my hip socket like not working anymore? Like, who? I never thought about my hip socket, and now I'm like, I think there's something wrong. My knees are weak. My back. I'm like, God, age is.
Yeah, yo tengo ganas. Like like the majority. I've been graying since I was 15. So like
me too.
If I were not to dye my hair every day, I would literally look like Storm. So
do it.
I intend to embrace it one day. I'm gonna get there.
We're all on our journey.
Exactly.
No, we're all on. It takes time. I'm with you. I don't know what it's gonna be. I'm like hopeful that the curls cover a lot of it for now. I really want the Storm. I don't know how it's gonna look with the curls, and I've heard with age they might.
Girl, that's gonna look. What are you talking about? That's gonna look amazing with curls.
Oh, I agree. I'm just saying I don't know if my curl because of how they might age, I might just not have the same tightness.
Yeah.
I just don't know what
it does exactly.
Yeah, I know my hair texture has changed a billion times. Like, and now it's just like this wavy thing, but it used to be, I used to have spiral curls, but then I would straighten my hair every day. So now the texture is different. And now I'm about to chop it off and put my hair in a protective style. I know, I can't wait. But it's a good quarantine chop. You know, the one that you're supposed to do.
I love it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was such a meaningful
We just keep on giggling here.
No, I just realized what time it was. I was like, oh.
It was such a pleasure to like chat with you all. This has been one of my very comfortable interviews. It felt more like we were just chatting. So thank you so much for having me, and
I'm so glad you felt comfortable. Thank you so much for coming on. I just, I always get so excited, like,
me
to
too.
have conversations. And I know Ariana is so tired of hearing this, but like, I get even more excited whenever we have like a fellow Afrolatina. Like, I feel so connected and to hear your story. So I'm so grateful. So thank you.
We are very, very grateful.
This is like not the recording, but just the original thing in July.
Say that one more time.
How did the original panel go?
July, right? Yeah, it went really, really well. It was a 2-hour conversation.
2.5 hours.
We had so many intelligent women on. We had an immigration lawyer from Florida. We had Natasha from the Grio.
Yeah, it's live.
I gotta check it out.
We have it. We can send you the links. We have it on Vimeo. Vimeo has like the whole video, literally, so you can actually see us on Vimeo. And then if not, we're on Facebook. We're on YouTube with audio, Spotify, iTunes. All the rest are just the audio, but it's everywhere. This is something that needs to. These are what we're all about. These conversations that need to happen, without a doubt.
I love it.
Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation and just giving us your presence and taking time out of your day. This conversation was just so meaningful, and it brought so many emotions. I know I say this every episode, but I'm just such an emotional person. But
that makes two of us. So I think our audience already knows that with us, you get really emotional and teary moments. But we're so thankful to have you. We're very excited to have you on. We're excited to keep on like this partnership and like cheering you on. Yeah. And thank you for just being here, a little bit of your time and spending it with us.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you for having me on LaTeaNa.
Thank you. Ciao, Latinas.
Ciao, Latinas.
We hope you enjoyed your tea.
You know we did.
Be a part of this conversation. Come join us. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, and more.
Where you can find us providing la tea y estar lateando con nuestras amigas. And remember,
we are all Latinas.
Latinas.